The day knowledge burned. What if the greatest loss in human history was not a war, not a kingdom, not even a civilization, but knowledge itself? Not just books, not just scrolls, but ideas, discoveries, technologies that may have changed the course of humanity forever. Imagine a place where the smartest minds on Earth gathered, where secrets of the stars were studied, where the past was recorded and the future was being written. Now imagine it all gone, burned, erased from history. This was the Library of Alexandria, and what disappeared inside it may still be the greatest mystery of all time. The birth of a dream. Around the 3rd century BCE, in the thriving city of Alexandria in Egypt, a bold idea was born, a vision unlike anything the world had ever seen, to collect all human knowledge in one place. Not some knowledge, not local knowledge, all knowledge. This was not just a library, it was a global project, a mission to gather every scroll, every book, every piece of writing from across the known world. Ships arriving at the port of Alexandria were searched. Any books on board were taken, copied, and stored. Scholars were invited, even paid, to come and study. The goal was clear: to understand everything. And for a time, they came close. The greatest minds of the ancient world. The library wasn't just filled with texts, it was alive with thinkers, mathematicians, astronomers, philosophers, inventors. Some of the greatest minds in history walked its halls. Euclid, who defined the foundations of geometry. Eratosthenes, who calculated the circumference of the earth with astonishing accuracy. Archimedes, whose discoveries still influence engineering today. They didn't just preserve knowledge, they expanded it. Inside those walls, ideas collided. Questions were asked that no one had asked before. Answers were discovered that may have been centuries ahead of their time. And yet, most of what they knew is gone.
Don't forget to like and subscribe for more.
What was inside? Historians estimate the library may have contained hundreds of thousands of scrolls. But what did those scrolls actually hold? We only have fragments, mentions, references, and other texts. But those fragments suggest something extraordinary. Lost plays from ancient Greece, scientific works that no longer exist, philosophical ideas that were never fully recorded again. Some believe the library may have contained early concepts of steam-powered machines, advanced astronomical calculations, maps of the ancient world far more detailed than we imagine, even knowledge inherited from civilizations older than Egypt itself. Because the library did not just collect Greek knowledge, it collected knowledge from Egypt, Babylon, India, Persia, possibly even beyond. This was not a local archive, it was the memory of the ancient world. The first flames. The destruction of the library did not happen in a single moment. It was not one fire. It was a slow unraveling. The first major blow may have come during the time of Julius Caesar. In 48 BCE, during a conflict in Alexandria, fires broke out near the harbor. Those fires may have spread. Some accounts suggest warehouses filled with scrolls were destroyed. But was that the library itself? Historians are still uncertain, because the truth is, the story is not clear. There is no single confirmed event, no precise date, just pieces, fragments of a destruction that may have happened over centuries.
Knowledge versus control. Imagine a world where knowledge is freely available, where anyone can learn, where ideas spread without restriction. Now imagine a world where knowledge is controlled, limited, filtered. Who benefits from each scenario? The Library of Alexandria represented something dangerous. Open access to knowledge, a place where ideas could challenge authority, where truth could question power. And history has shown that systems of control often fear knowledge, because knowledge creates independence, and independence challenges control. What if the library didn't just disappear by accident? What if its destruction served a purpose? The knowledge we lost. Think about this carefully. If even a fraction of what was stored in Alexandria was lost, then humanity may have lost centuries of progress. Imagine rediscovering ancient scientific theories more advanced than we expect, technologies based on natural principles we have forgotten, philosophies that could reshape how we see reality. We often assume progress is linear, that we are more advanced than the past. But what if that's not true? What if knowledge rises and falls? What if humanity has forgotten as much as it has learned? The shadow of earlier civilizations. Some historians believe the library contained texts even older than classical civilization, records passed down from earlier cultures, possibly even from civilizations we barely understand today. Ancient Egypt itself was already thousands of years old when the library was built. What knowledge existed before it? What was copied, preserved, then lost again? If the library was a collector of knowledge, then it may have been preserving the memory of multiple civilizations. And when it burned, it wasn't just one culture that was lost, it was many.
The echo that remains. Even though the library is gone, its influence remains. Fragments of its knowledge survived through other cultures, copied, translated, rewritten, passed through generations. But fragments are not the whole. Imagine reading only a few pages from a book and trying to understand the entire story. That is where we are today, trying to reconstruct a lost world from scattered pieces. The myth and the reality. Over time, the Library of Alexandria became more than history. It became a symbol of lost knowledge, a symbol of human curiosity, a symbol of what we once were and what we might have been. But the myth may hide something deeper, because sometimes stories survive not just to remember the past, but to warn the future. The question that remains. So the real question is not just what was lost, but why was it lost? Was it an accident, a series of unfortunate events, or something more deliberate? Because if knowledge on that scale can disappear once, it can disappear again. The library as a machine. What if the Library of Alexandria was not just a place, but a system? Think about it. Thousands of scrolls, scholars from across the world, constant copying, translating, analyzing. This was not passive storage, it was active processing. Information was being collected, decoded, reinterpreted, and expanded. In a way, the library functions like an ancient supercomputer. Input, knowledge from every civilization. Output, new understanding, new ideas, new breakthroughs. And like any powerful system, it had the potential to change everything. The lost sciences. There are whispers, fragments scattered across history that suggest the ancients may have known more than we assume. Some texts describe mechanical devices far ahead of their time. Others hint at advanced understanding of astronomy. There are references to machines powered by steam, optical devices that resemble early lenses, mathematical calculations that rival modern precision. But here's the unsettling part. Many of these references point to works that no longer exist, books that were once studied but are now gone. And many of those missing works were said to be stored in Alexandria. What if the library didn't just hold knowledge, but knowledge we have not yet rediscovered? The Forbidden Scrolls. Not all knowledge is treated equally. Some ideas are welcomed, others are rejected, and some are buried. Throughout history, certain teachings have been labeled dangerous. Ideas that challenge belief systems, concepts that threaten authority, knowledge that could disrupt power structures. If such ideas existed in the ancient world, where would they be stored? The most complete collection of knowledge ever created, the library. Which raises a question few people ask. Was everything inside Alexandria meant to be preserved, or were there texts that some wanted destroyed? Fire as erasure. Fire does more than destroy. It erases. No fragments, no evidence, no recovery. When a scroll burns, its ideas disappear with it. And in the ancient world, knowledge was fragile. There were no backups, no digital copies, no archives across continents. If a text was lost in a fire, it was gone forever. Which makes the destruction of the library more than tragedy. It becomes a perfect method of removal, not just destruction, erasure. The multiple destructions theory. Many people imagine a single catastrophic event, one night, one fire, one moment when everything was lost. But history suggests something more complex. The library may have been damaged, rebuilt, weakened, and destroyed again, over decades, possibly centuries, each event removing more knowledge, each generation inheriting less than the one before, until eventually almost nothing remained, a slow fading, instead of a sudden end.
The rise of new powers. As the ancient world changed, new powers emerged. Empires expanded, religions spread, political systems shifted, and with these changes came new priorities: control, stability, unity. But knowledge, especially uncontrolled knowledge, can create instability. Ideas can challenge belief systems. Science can contradict doctrine. Philosophy can question authority. In such an environment, a place like the Library of Alexandria becomes complicated, not just valuable, but dangerous. The shift from inquiry to belief. The library represented a world driven by questions: why? How? What if? But history shows periods where questioning became less encouraged, where belief replaced inquiry, where answers were accepted rather than explored. This shift does not happen overnight. It happens gradually, one generation at a time, until curiosity fades. And when curiosity fades, so does the need for places like the library. The vanishing of curiosity. The destruction of the library was not just physical, it was symbolic. It marked a shift in human history, from exploration to preservation, from questioning to acceptance. When knowledge disappears, curiosity often follows, because curiosity needs fuel. It needs access to ideas, to questions, to possibilities. Remove that, and the drive to explore weakens. What if it survived? Here is a possibility rarely considered. What if not everything was lost? What if some texts were removed, hidden, protected, before the destruction, during the chaos, carried away by scholars, taken to distant lands, stored in secret archives? History has examples of knowledge being preserved in unexpected places: hidden monasteries, private collections, underground chambers. What if fragments of Alexandria still exist, scattered across the world, unrecognized, unread?
the hidden continuation. Knowledge does not always disappear. Sometimes it goes underground. Secret societies, private scholars, guardians of texts. Throughout history, there have always been individuals who preserve knowledge outside the public eye, not to destroy it, but to protect it. If the library contained powerful or controversial ideas, it is possible some were intentionally removed before its fall. Hidden, passed quietly through generations, never meant for the masses. The modern rediscovery. Today, we are discovering things that challenge what we thought we knew about the past. Ancient mechanisms like the Antikythera device, structures aligned with astronomical precision, mathematical knowledge embedded in architecture. Each discovery forces us to reconsider. What did the ancients really know? And more importantly, what have we forgotten? If even small discoveries can reshape our understanding, what would the full library have revealed? The fragility of knowledge. We often think of knowledge as permanent, but it is not. It depends on preservation, on transmission, on protection. Remove those, and knowledge vanishes. Even today, in the digital age, information can be lost. Data can be deleted. Systems can fail. Formats can become obsolete. Now imagine that fragility in the ancient world, where everything depended on fragile scrolls, and a single spark could erase centuries. The illusion of progress. We like to believe we are at the peak of knowledge, the most advanced point in history. But what if progress is not a straight line? What if it's a cycle? Periods of discovery, followed by periods of loss. Civilizations rising, then falling. Knowledge expanding, then disappearing. If that is true, then the Library of Alexandria was not just a beginning. It may have been a peak. And what came after was a decline. The questions we can't answer. There are questions we may never be able to answer. What was the most advanced idea stored in Alexandria? What discovery was closest to changing history? What truth was written down and then lost forever? We are left with silence and imagination, trying to fill the gaps. The shadow it casts. Even in its absence, the library shapes how we think about knowledge. It represents possibility, potential, what humanity can achieve when it seeks to understand everything. But it also represents vulnerability, how easily that knowledge can disappear, how fragile progress really is. The lesson hidden in the ashes. Maybe the library's greatest legacy is not what it contained, but what it teaches us, that knowledge must be protected, shared, preserved, because once it is lost, it may never return.
The knowledge before history. What if the Library of Alexandria did not just contain the knowledge of its time, but knowledge from a time before recorded history? Ancient Egypt itself was already ancient when the library was founded. The pyramids were thousands of years old. Civilizations had risen and fallen long before Alexandria was built. So where did the Egyptians get their knowledge, and where did those civilizations get theirs? Some historians believe that ancient knowledge was passed down, copied again and again across generations, not created once, but inherited. If that is true, then the library may have been preserving something far older than we imagine, a chain of knowledge stretching back into a past we barely understand. The idea of a lost civilization. There is a theory, one that exists on the edge of history and speculation, that before known civilization, there was another, a civilization advanced in ways we do not yet fully understand. Not necessarily with modern machines,
but with a different kind of knowledge. Knowledge of nature, of energy, of the cosmos. If such a civilization existed, and if fragments of its knowledge survived, where would that knowledge end up? In the greatest archive ever built, the Library of Alexandria. And if that library was destroyed, then whatever remained of that ancient world may have been lost with it. The reset hypothesis. Look at history closely. There are moments where progress seems to disappear, where civilizations collapse suddenly, where knowledge fades. And then humanity starts again, rebuilding, rediscovering, relearning. Some call this coincidence. Others call it a pattern, a cycle, a reset. If knowledge accumulates to a certain level and then disappears, what causes that? War, natural disasters, or something else? If Alexandria was part of a larger accumulation of knowledge, then its destruction may not have been isolated. It may have been part of a larger reset. The guardians of knowledge. But here is where the story takes a different turn, because not all knowledge is lost when civilizations fall. Sometimes it is preserved, protected, hidden. Throughout history, there have always been groups dedicated to safeguarding knowledge. Monks copying manuscripts in secret, scholars hiding texts during times of conflict, private collections kept away from public access. If the library contained knowledge considered too valuable or too dangerous, it is possible that some of it was never meant to be destroyed. It may have been removed before the fall, hidden intentionally, guarded carefully, passed only to a few. The idea of hidden archives. Even today, there are places where knowledge is stored, but rarely seen. Massive archives, restricted collections, documents that are not publicly accessible. History is full of references to hidden vaults, underground chambers, sealed rooms beneath ancient structures. What if some of the knowledge from Alexandria, or copies of it, ended up in such places? Not destroyed, not lost, but simply out of reach. The Vatican theory. One of the most persistent ideas is that ancient knowledge may exist within hidden archives, places where access is limited, where only selected individuals can study certain texts. The Vatican, for example, holds one of the largest collections of historical documents in the world. Many of these texts are not publicly available. We don't know exactly what is inside, only that it exists, and it raises a question. If fragments of ancient knowledge survived, could they be stored in places like this? Not necessarily hidden for secrecy alone, but for control. Because knowledge, especially powerful knowledge, has always been closely guarded. The fragments we keep finding. Despite everything that was lost, pieces continue to surface. Ancient manuscripts discovered in caves, buried texts uncovered in forgotten ruins, translations of works once thought destroyed. Each discovery is small, incomplete, but together they form a pattern, a reminder that history is not fully known, that what we see is only a fraction of what once existed. If fragments can survive thousands of years, what else is still out there, waiting to be found?
Today, we live in an age of information. More data exists now than at any point in history. Everything is recorded, stored, shared instantly across the world. And yet, this abundance creates a new problem: information overload, misinformation, distraction. The more information we have, the harder it becomes to find what truly matters. In a strange way, we may be experiencing a different kind of loss. Not the destruction of knowledge, but the inability to recognize it. Digital fragility.
We trust digital storage, cloud systems, servers, databases. But these systems are not permanent. They depend on electricity, on infrastructure, on stability. A large-scale disruption could erase vast amounts of modern knowledge in seconds, just like fire erased the library. Different method, same result. Which raises a disturbing possibility. Are we as secure as we think, or are we just one event away from losing everything again? The cycle continues. History may not be a straight line. It may be a loop. Knowledge grows, reaches a peak, then declines, then grows again. Each time slightly different, but never fully retaining what came before. If that is true, then the Library of Alexandria was not just an isolated tragedy. It was one point in a repeating pattern, a reminder that progress is fragile and that memory can be erased. The question of intent. And now we arrive at the most uncomfortable question. Was it truly an accident, or was it intentional? Because accidental destruction leaves chaos, confusion, clear evidence. But the story of Alexandria is different, unclear, fragmented, almost obscured. No single account, no definitive answer, just uncertainty. And sometimes uncertainty is not the absence of truth, but the absence of access to it. The edge of understanding. We stand today at the edge of what we know, looking back at a past we cannot fully see, trying to reconstruct a story with missing pieces. The Library of Alexandria is more than history. It is a reminder that knowledge can be gathered, expanded, and then disappear, leaving behind only questions. What if it happens again? If it happened once, it can happen again, not necessarily through fire, but through collapse, disruption, forgetting. Because knowledge does not disappear only when it is destroyed. It disappears when it is ignored, when it is no longer understood, when it is no longer valued. The silence that remains. And so we are left with silence, where once there were voices, ideas, debates, discoveries. Now, nothing. No scrolls, no records, no complete answers. Just the echo of what once existed, and the realization that we may never fully know what was lost.
The Library of Alexandria was not just a building. It was a reflection of something deeper, human ambition, the desire to understand the unknown, to collect every idea, every story, every truth. It represented a moment when humanity believed that everything could be known, that the universe could be understood, and that knowledge itself was the path forward. But when the library disappeared, something else disappeared with it. That belief. There is something unsettling about lost knowledge, because it creates a gap we cannot measure. We don't just lose answers, we lose questions, ideas that were never rediscovered, concepts we never even imagined, possibilities that no longer exist. The library didn't just contain information, it contained potential. And when it burned, that potential vanished with it. The power of preservation. If the story of Alexandria teaches us anything, it is this: knowledge must be preserved, not just stored, but protected, shared, distributed, because centralized knowledge, no matter how vast, is vulnerable. The library gathered everything into one place, and that made it powerful. But it also made it fragile, because when that one place was lost,
Everything went with it. The modern reflection. Today, we are building something similar, a global network of information, connected systems, shared knowledge across the world. In many ways, we are creating a modern version of Alexandria. But the question is, have we learned from the past, or are we repeating it? Because even now, information can be controlled, restricted, removed. And just like before, the more centralized knowledge becomes, the more vulnerable it is. The disappearing truth. In a world full of information, truth can still disappear. Not through destruction, but through distortion, buried under noise, lost in endless streams of data, drowned by misinformation. In the past, knowledge was lost to fire. Today, it can be lost to confusion, and the result is the same. We forget. The library within us. There is another way to see the library, not as a building, but as an idea, a reflection of the human mind. Each person carries knowledge, memories, experiences, understanding. In a way, we are all libraries, and just like Alexandria, what we know can be lost, forgotten, or never passed on. The responsibility of knowledge. If knowledge is fragile, then preserving it becomes a responsibility, not just for institutions, but for individuals, to question, to learn, to share. Because knowledge that is not shared eventually disappears. The library tried to gather everything, but maybe the real lesson is the opposite. Knowledge should not exist in one place. It should exist everywhere. The fear of what was lost. There is one final thought that lingers over everything. What if the most important knowledge was the first to disappear? Not random texts, not minor works, but the most powerful ideas. The ones that could change everything. The ones that could challenge systems. The ones that could reshape the future. If that knowledge existed, and if it was intentionally removed, then the loss of the library becomes something else entirely. Not just tragedy, but silence. The unanswered mystery. And so we return to the mystery. Not how the library burned, but what disappeared with it. Because the fire is not the real story. The absence is. The empty space where knowledge once existed. A void in history that we are still trying to fill. Standing in the ashes. Imagine standing where the library once stood. No walls, no scrolls, no voices, just silence. And beneath that silence, the weight of everything that was lost. Ideas never read again, discoveries never rediscovered, truths that vanished without a trace, and the realization that we are building our understanding of the world on incomplete foundations. The echo of Alexandria. What if the Library of Alexandria never truly disappeared? Not completely, not entirely. What if its greatest knowledge was never written on scrolls, but passed in a different way, quietly, indirectly, hidden in fragments across time? Imagine this, a single idea, copied from one scroll before the fire, whispered from one mind to another, carried across generations, changed slightly each time, but never fully lost. What if pieces of Alexandria still exist, not in buildings, but in us, in the questions we ask, in the patterns we rediscover, in the truths we feel but cannot fully explain? Because knowledge doesn't always vanish. Sometimes it waits, waiting to be found again, waiting for the right moment, waiting for someone to ask the right question. And maybe that's where we are now, standing at the edge of rediscovery, rebuilding what was lost without even realizing it. But here is the final thought. If the Library of Alexandria truly contained knowledge powerful enough to change humanity, and if that knowledge disappeared, then we are not just looking at the past, we are looking at a missing future, a future that once existed, written in scrolls, studied by the greatest minds, and then erased. Or maybe not erased, just hidden, because somewhere, in forgotten texts, in undiscovered ruins, or even in ideas yet to be understood, the echo of Alexandria still remains, waiting. And the question is not just what was lost, but what are we ready to rediscover?